on air with Danielle Gray. This is another deep dive conversation interview. I'm going to introduce my next interviewee and guest. He has an amazing story, and I'm going to let him introduce himself right now.
So
Hi.
hi, how's it going? Sorry.
That's okay.
I want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show. Thank you for the opportunity that you have given me to go on your show and to start a great friendship. Because off air we were having a great conversation, and I think it's important that we get to hear. We bring people together with different mindsets, and we work and we utilize and pick at each other's brains, and to think and kind of give more of a not different reality but different perspective of life. And that's why I think it's important.
Exactly. And we are becoming friends. We are. And I think that
We are actually, yeah.
It's nice to meet people through this new world. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and let the people know about your amazing story because, oh my gosh, it blows my mind.
So I was born on October 7th, 1998 in Vladikavkaz, Russia. Try saying that 5 times. And it's for people that are looking at the geography probably after this episode, it is actually 15 minutes away from Georgia, the country. It is surrounded by the map. So it's between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And that's where our city was. It's a city of 300,000. Of course, it was more populated at that time, but now it's less populated because that part of Russia is under a civil war, and it is and they're trying to take over Georgia, the country. So Georgia's fighting back, and so it was interesting, and that's still going on to this very day. And I was born during that war zone, and I was given up to a baby orphanage right at birth. And because I was given up to a baby orphanage, I was left there for about till 2006, so it was until 8.5 years old. And that was one of the worst 8.5 years of my life, I would say. It was not enjoyable. It was like constant shelling. It was a war zone, and it was not a typical place that you would want to grow up in. You had to grow up really, really fast. And so it was interesting because back in 2006, we had a family that came, and I was adopted twice. So the first family that adopted me were from England. He was part of Princess Diana's royal guard at that time, and he had family there. And it was interesting because they went to adopt one girl, but when they went to the orphanage, the orphanage told them to adopt as many kids as they can. And so then they ended up adopting 4 boys and 3 girls. And what happened was, since it ended up being a rescue mission, because the KGB started catching on to what was going on, and they started catching on, and started getting very dangerous in that atmosphere. So we escaped in the middle of the night, and if we would have stayed there 2 hours later, I would not be here talking in front of you because the orphanage got bombed. Over 150 babies were killed, and it was just absolutely, it was very, very sad. We went to Georgia, the country, and from there we went to England, and then from England we went to Bend, Oregon. And during that time, we traveled around the world. I remember going to Canada a lot because the family did horse racing and motorcycle racing, and we went to Canada. And I remember I have a funny story about Canada. So I remember riding my bicycle when I was a little kid, and I said, okay, well, it's not bad. And what happened was that there was a downhill because it was like a horse rant. It was a horse show and stuff. It was during the winter. And I remember hitting a side of a truck with my bicycle because my brakes froze. And it was actually funny. Huh?
That's Canada.
Yeah. And I said, no. And it was a random truck actually. And the funny part is I didn't do like a single, like I didn't dent the truck at all. Like I'll leave a scratch on, but I left a scratch on me quite a bit. And I think I left with a concussion. Yeah. And it was very fun being in Canada. And I was there when I was a little kid. How we went to Canada is we went through Washington. So from Bend, Oregon, we go up to Portland and Washington, and all the way up to Canada. And it was a beautiful time. Canada is a beautiful country, by the way. But the politics, on the other hand, it is like a sewer toilet, like a sewer system.
It's messy.
Yeah, it's very messy.
Yeah.
But no, so in 2008, so fast forward 2.5 years. In 2008, I was adopted by another family in Wisconsin, of a pastor and a choir teacher.
Okay.
And my dad is still a pastor, but my mom decided to retire from teaching. And so I came to Wisconsin, and it was a very, very, very interesting time in Wisconsin because being in faith and stuff, I kind of want to really focus in on this because, I never knew what it was like to follow God.
Yeah.
And, like, for instance, going to a church right away and stuff, it was a little bit interesting because, that means you had to grow in the church and you had to grow in all this. You had to like develop. So I felt like I kind of was sheltered.
Yeah.
And because I knew that my dad was a pastor and our family was religious and I knew I was religious. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to really, I can just walk the motions and I can tell people I'm a Christian to fit all all the right check boxes.
Yeah.
Well, that ended up changing, and we're going to get to that in I think couple minutes or so.
Oh yeah.
Because did I get a rude awakening? And that's going to be a foreshadow. But either way, what happened is that during that time, so my dad is still a pastor. He was a pastor when I was adopted, and he's still a pastor. And what happened was each Sunday, we always go to church on Sundays, Wednesdays, and we had Bible studies on Saturday mornings. And of course, I attended all of them. And it was a little bit interesting. I loved it because it kept me active. It kept me active in the community. And when you're a pastor's kid, there's nothing that you can't get away with anything if you're a pastor's kid because people always know who you are. People know who you are and they can identify you very easily. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I'm like, man, it's a little bit weird how people know me like way too much and stuff, but I didn't really matter. It was a little bit weird starting off, but then it just kind of came in and said, okay, this is kind of have to get used to. People going up to you, say, some people don't like you, some people do, and it's interesting. But then I joined cross country when I was 6.5 years old in middle school. And what happened was I was dead last in cross country because I had one leg shorter than the other. And another thing is I was too busy talking to everyone. I was dead last because I would stop and I would talk to somebody and then I would get lost. But then, around mid-season of my 6th grade, I started getting realization. I'm like, I'm tired of being last. And I still got, and that was my first, season. I can say I was like 0-9. I didn't like come close. I was like, out of all 9 races, I was not all dead last. It was disheartening. And then in 7th grade, and during that time, during the off season, because I was in track and field, same thing with track and field, kind of being dead last. For the long distance, for the mile, and just kind of for the 800. But then 7th grade, during that 6th grade and 7th grade summer, I worked my tail end off. And then 7th grade kind of paid off because I was in the middle of the pack. And I kind of won races here and there, but it wasn't like it was by default. Because I was like, it was not by default, but it was because it's, somebody like fell in front of me, then I just win. Or if somebody fell in front of me, then, if I was like, I came in top 5 majority of my races in middle school. 8th grade, I won all my races and was one of the top runners in the conference, in our cross country conference. And the same thing with track and field, and I actually set a record for 8th grade for middle school for their 2 mile, which was 12:30. As a middle school record for the time for our school. And then summer came by and then sat on varsity all 4 years across country for high school and it was like one huge amount of races. And It was great. And during the summer, I did summer cross country. So I won majority of my races out of 10. I won, uh, averaging 10 races during the summer. I won 7 out of the 10. And but 3 races, I came in the top 5. And so it was a very fun experience. But the reason why I kept on at it and stuff is because I wanted to be determined. You know, if somebody tells me, you know, somebody tries to knock me down, I'm all about getting back up. You know, I'm all about fighting. I'm all about saying, you know what, if I have a goal in mind, I'm going to achieve it one way or the other. You know, I'm going to find ways. I'm going to surround myself with people that are supportive. I'm going to find people that are going to be, you know, compassionate and caring and just, you know, showing empathetic and, you know, kind of keep my feet in the fire and say, no, well, you can do it. Let's do this together. And then, and let's win. So, you know, and then here comes the class presidency. So during the high school, all of my high school years, I ran for class president. And I lost 4 years out of the 5. The 5th year, I won my senior class president. And somebody's like, why are you running? They're like, why are you running like the 5th time? They're like, why are you running for your 5th time? You're not gonna have a chance. You clearly are 0-4, and the only reason why you held a class officer is by default. And it's because you know, no one ran for the secretary position for second or not. Well, no one ran for. I think I was secretary. Yeah, I was secretary for class president, and no one. And the only reason I was that because no one ran for that position, and so I was secretary for a couple of the years, and then my senior year, I said, okay, all eggs in one basket and see what goes on. Because during that time, we had somebody that ran for the secretary position, and we had somebody that ran like all of it. And so if I would have lost, I would have not even had, I would have just been like in the regular student body. So the coolest thing was I announced my class presidency back in my senior year, actually back in junior year. And I said, it was as the school year was wrapping up, I said, you know, I think I'm going to run. And I surprised because what happened is that we had one candidate that she was so determined. She thought that it was going to be a clear walk. You know, she thought it was going to be a clear finish. And I'm more one of those people that, you know, I'm more one of those people stating, I like to leave you on suspense. You know, and of course you have people and faculty members telling you that, are you running for class president? So, because before I've learned from my mistakes from before, I would always announce way too early, and I would always go on the attack. I would say, you know, I would go on the attack. I would go on saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do. You know, you can't vote for this person because of all this, put out their dirty laundry out in the public eye, or for our class to know. And it didn't build anything. And I think that's why I lost all 4 years. But the 5th year, though, my junior year, I said, you know what, I'm going to change that around. And I said, you know what, I'm going to run because I care about you. I am going to run because I want to listen to you guys, you know, because your voices matter. And if we come together, we can, if we come together, we can get things done. You know, we can, you know, do homecoming. We can make a successful homecoming. We can get all these certain things done. And so it was interesting, and it was very hard to work with during the middle school or during the senior year. It was very, very challenging time, because the sad part is that the sad part is that I never got a full cooperation from the half of the class because it ended up being a very close vote, and we had a guy that was. There were 3 candidates altogether. But I kind of felt bad because the third one people didn't really know who he was and stuff. And I kind of felt bad because they already knew it was because I was one of the guys and then there was a girl, but it ended up being the 2 of us that were like in the most, you know, that ended up being in the most limelight or ended up being the most popular and stuff. And it did not become a popularity contest, but I did kind of feel bad because it kind of shows you with the third party candidate that doesn't really give, I mean, bless his heart, but I guess if you don't like both of us, then you could vote for that individual. And so, but the cool thing is, I won the senior class presidency, and it was like, a good relief because it showed that I was determined and that I did care about, and I did listen to the class as best as I could. But I said, you know what, we have to come together as a society. We have to come together as a class and try to unify and try to unite under one, as one. So let's come up with community service projects like for food drives and for all these other ideas I have come up with. And we did. They were successful. And I was also focused on, with the food drives, I was also focused on trying to having our class impact the community so people can remember our class, saying, oh, that class, they did great things for this community. Because that's who I am. I'm all about leaving legacies. And so during that senior year, I was focused on joining the military. I never, ever expected to be in the military. And the reason why I joined the military, the United States Air Force, was because, first of all, I prayed about it, and it was led by prayer, and it was led by guidance, and it was my time in service and saying, you know what, because America has allowed me to live the American dream, I have to sacrifice something, just like how we have to pay taxes and just how we have to sacrifice by joining the draft. So we have to do the same thing. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to be I joined the United States Air Force. So what happened was I joined the Air Force, left the day after my birthday to basic training. And that's when I got the realization where I said, okay, you know what, now I'm in the real world. And now I need to really have a dependent on my faith. Because I was always thinking that, with faith, that you can be living a sheltered life and that, just because of having your parents, thinking that your parents, like you're a Christian, just because you go to church and all that, that became a quick narrative that was out the window, quicker than a jackrabbit. Because the whole thing is, when joining the military, I heard that the military can make or break a person. For instance, how it can make a person, how can it make a person is that if you have faith, if you go in the military having faith, if you go in the military surrounding yourself with good people, and you go start attending church, and if you go attending involved on the base and stuff, you can get things accomplished. You can surround yourself with good, healthy people. But how can it break is if you surround yourself with very toxic people, that is always in your ear saying, yeah, do this, do that, and don't think for you and don't think the otherwise, then it's going to break you because it's going to have you doing stupid decisions. And then you're going to be left with an Article 15, and then you're going to be left with a life decision that you're like, oh man, I wish I never did that, but now I have a long lasting consequence. Perfect example was once you get out of basic training, you pretty much you're in the military once you get out of the basic training. And that means it's a true testament. It's a true testament to your faith, because in basic training, I loved basic training because you went to church, and you went to church and you couldn't find a seat. You had to stand because it was that full. And after basic, you couldn't find a person you had to ask people to go to church. And even if you did go to church, I mean, the first row was always empty, and the first 3 rows were always empty, and then the first back rows were empty, and it was very hard to get people in, the military. And so it was interesting because I said, okay, you know what? I'm in tech school now. Okay, I don't want to be surrounded. I still want to have faith. I still want to make an impact. I still want to do a difference. I'm going to get myself involved in church, and I did. And because I was involved in church, I stayed away from drinking. I stayed away from smoking, because that's the way that breaks you. Because if you find yourself in the wrong crowd, you're going to be wasting all your money drinking and smoking, and which has, anyways, short term, you think that's healthy for short term, but no, it's worse off. Long term, it's really bad for your health. Short term, it's really bad for your wallet, and it leads you it leads you to like a stress because you don't know if you're like living by paycheck to paycheck. So I found a church on base, and I got involved. And during that time, I was still in tech school, and I did fail. I did fail my first job, which was HVAC, which is heating and ventilation and cooling. And so I did not allow that to define who I was because I don't like failing. And so during that time of 3 months, I said, okay, you know what? There is a problem. I'm not going to allow people, because you have to go in front of a board. You know, when you're in the military, you have to go in front of a board, and they tell you, why do you think you should be, why do you think you should stay? Why do you think that we should still allow you to be in the military? You know, and what have you done during this 3 months that you're off? What have you done to prove that you should still be in the military besides doing nothing? So what happened was, uh, I started I started a suicide prevention program called the Pass It On, and it was an awesome prevention program because I want to know why there was such a high suicide rate, and it ended up being that it was toxicity in the work environment, and it was just the way that people didn't have anyone to talk to, and there was that stigma of, you know, going to mental health. There's a bad stigma. I think, oh man, if you go to mental health, it's a bad thing, which is not, because I do utilize mental health, and I urge everyone, if you're going through a difficult time, to talk to mental health, because they're there to listen. You know, they care about you, and they show compassion, and they want what's best for you. So I started it, and it was in my base, and it flourished, and it was an awesome thing. And that's what actually continued to allow me to serve in the military. And I left that long lasting legacy of doing that once a month now. So they still do it once a month, that camaraderie and the cookout, and you know, just allowing us to get together once a month, or for them to get together from all ranks and from all the branches as a base. Like, you know, it's normally done on a Saturday, and it's normally like either a gathering, or it's like a huge outing, like a outback, like a picnic, you know, where you have like your carnival snacks and stuff. And the whole purpose of it was to have ranks, from like, because in the military you have to have, like, you have ranks, you know, you have your commander and you have like your supervisor and stuff. But on that one Saturday, that commander and that supervisor took off their uniforms, and you took off your uniforms, and you went in civilian clothes like I'm wearing right now. And then you got to maybe talk to your commander, maybe talk to your supervisor, and you didn't know if they were or not, because they were in their civilian clothes, and that allowed you to get closer with them. You know, that allowed you to get a closer connection, saying, you know what, if I'm going through this, can I rely on you? Majority of them said yes, and so that's the cool thing that I was hoping for, because it stated that, you know what, it doesn't matter what rank you are, you still matter. You know, and that one attempt is too many. And that was my catchphrase. I said, one attempt is too many. And it led. And so I went back to Lackland for tech school, but I kind of was focused on my studies, because I knew that was my one. I mean, it's like one of those like one strike you're out deals. So if I had one more strike, I would have probably got actually asked to leave. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to be doing that. So I'm going to really focus on really focusing on studying and stuff. So I studied, and I got orders to go to Japan. And I got orders to go to Tokyo, Japan, to be exact. And it was very interesting to go to Tokyo, Japan. And it was fun, because I went to Tokyo, Japan in June. And because I went there, I had to get everything all in order. And that was a very, very tough experience, going to Tokyo, Japan. That was a very, very rough time. And that actually, during that time, I did not know that Japan was going to be my one and only duty base. And it was going to be my last duty base I would have known. And it would have been my last deployment that I would have known as well. And so it's a little bit, thinking about it, it was a little bit disheartening. But I didn't expect to get the amount of bullying I received. I didn't expect to get like the amount of harassment. You know, it's the fact that my supervisor would call me derogatory names, tell me to go back to my country, tell me to perform you circus monkey, and tell me to do all like treat me like as a Russian agent, and she just milked that till like it came. I mean, it came back like she would milk it until like it was done, or beat the dead horse per se. So then I became paralyzed, and um, I became paralyzed on October. Well, I got really sick on October 2nd of of 2019, and I became paralyzed from my neck down. And then I had to take about a year to get recovered, and um, it was it was rough indeed. And I had to relearn how to do everything literally. And so, um, yeah, and there was now I'm getting better, and it was getting back to normal life. So now I'm gonna allow you to take the floor. I'm sorry for
No,
talking
it's
for almost
okay.
40
It's
minutes.
like everybody has basically, yeah, a short little version of like your life. It's good that viewers know that now, so that now they actually know you. So thank you for introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your story and of what a fascinating life you have lived. My first question is, what was it like growing up being adopted? I'm sure it was like a shock to your system in a lot of ways.
So, like, what was it like being adopted?
Yeah,
The
what was
first,
it? Yeah,
second family.
yeah, what was it like being adopted? Because I'm sure a lot of viewers are curious about just being adopted in general. You're not adopted, you're just like yourself, the viewer.
Yes. So being adopted, it was a little bit interesting. I never guessed. It was interesting being adopted the first time, um, because I thought it was like a family that I was could be dependent on forever. I thought it was a family that did love me, and I thought it was a family that cared and showed compassion. and and it was interesting because I thought it was gonna be forever. My family was gonna be there forever, and I thought, this is my permanent home. But then being adopted the second time, it was thinking, oh man, I guess I'm not loved. I guess I'm guessing it was um, I'm guessing it was my fault for not being adopted. I guess it was
A lot
my
of kids
fault for
blame themselves.
100%.
A lot of kids blame themselves for stuff like that, like either being divorced or being adopted for a second time. A lot of kids, yeah, we just blame ourselves for the things that adults do, and that's just
Yeah,
very,
and thinking that I'm not good enough for the family.
yeah,
You know? And
yeah,
it was interesting because and then I kind of got the realization that God does have a bigger plan afterwards.
yeah.
And one thing that over the years that I noticed is that over the years I realized that God has a plan for literally everything. There's a purpose and a reason why you have there's a purpose and a reason for you being in this kind of predicament. And I don't know the answers. I sure don't want to know the answers actually, but there are some answers I do want to know. And like there's a plan that when God does set us a plan, when we accept Him as our Lord and Savior, He gives us on this wonderful plan that we don't know, but there's a prize at the end of the finish line, and that's everlasting life. Now, during the course and during the time, you're going to have hills and valleys. You're going to have ups and downs, and you're going to have turbulences. But the cool thing is that you're going to, you're not going to be alone. You're going to always have somebody to count on. You can call upon God to come to alongside with you at any time. And it was interesting because now looking back on it, during that time with um, being in that kind of a predicament, being within in that time of just acknowledging, okay, God, isn't like maybe He was watching after over me and stuff. Maybe there was an incident with that first family that something bad would have happened, and I would have been maybe at fault, and He was saving me from a major disaster. Maybe He was preserving me. So I kind of had to. That kind of thinking was to me was kind of a selfish thinking.
No, it's a good
Um,
thinking. It's a positive thinking because you never want to look at bad thing that's happening to you. Hopefully, you don't look at it as the bad thing that's happening to you. You gotta look at the positive side. There's always some outcome that will come out of it. Hopefully, that will be even better,
mhm.
right? So
Yep.
hopefully people think like that, but a lot of people, there's a lot of people that just think this is a bad thing that's happening to me. There's no reason, like it's just part of life. Like they don't find the inner answers of soul searching. They don't look beyond.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what was it like? You said that you were adopted when we were talking before. You were adopted from an England family from London, England, and you moved all across the world. And then you were adopted into an American family. Was that like a really like a shock to your system because you're going from being like living in across the world and with this British family and a bunch of kids to going by yourself to an American family?
So the British family had dual citizenship to America.
Okay.
So they left all their American documentation in England to go to Russia.
Yeah.
And so once we were in England, then we moved back to Bend, Oregon, because they had a house in Bend, Oregon.
Okay.
And so that we were adapted, but then we had a family from Wisconsin go to Oregon.
Yeah.
To adopt me. So I was already in America when I was adopted the second time. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have clarified about that.
No, that's okay. That's interesting to know because especially coming from Russia, like it's like it must be a shock to your system to.
Oh, I definitely can tell you, I never realized what TV was.
Yeah.
Being adopted, both times, I had to really adapt. For instance, I had to make sure, like when I was a little kid, I had to make sure, like, if there was lightning and there was thunder and stuff, I had to make sure, like, to me, what helped me get through those thunderstorms was thinking, okay, the angels are bowling, and if the lights they got to strike, that means like, right. And then the thunder would be the pins falling down.
Yeah.
So that's what the best, and that's what got me through it and stuff. So like whenever a thunderstorm would come about, I'm like, oh, there must be bowling time in heaven. I don't know why in the middle of the day, but I guess you have to have 5 o'clock somewhere.
I would agree that too, actually. It's come up with the most beautiful things to explain.
And then I also had to get used to saying that the police officers are good people. For when instance, back in Russia and stuff, you have police officers that would sit outside the orphanages and would prey on little kids and sell them for sex trafficking.
Oh.
And so then I was always afraid of police officers and I was always afraid of sirens.
Yeah.
So whenever the sirens would come, I would actually sneak underneath my desk and I would ball up, and then I would cry and like scream, telling them to get away from me. But then over the years, I grew out of that, and then I realized that the police and the first responders and everyone else are good people and stuff. So I had to kind of adapt to that,
Yeah, that's a lot of trauma to work through, especially from Russia, with the way that Russia is run, and then going to America and feeling safer, and that trauma that you feel, and to have to like rewrite your brain kind of in your body to respond to certain things that were safer must have been, that's incredible because it just must have been so scary as a kid to go from like not feeling safe to learning how to be safe again.
Yeah.
For the first time ever. Like that's just
that's
terrifying. And just to have it like and to do it as a kid to feel yourself, because we don't really know what's going on with our bodies to begin with, or our heads. So for you to have done that as a child, to move through that and feel yourself, it shows a lot of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So you really grew up really quickly, and you were really self-aware of your body and your brain, and it's just wow, that's amazing because a lot of people don't get that quick.
And then you have to really grow up really fast too. I mean, you have to, because back in Russia and stuff, you have to really grow up because like you're pretty much battle of the fittest.
Yeah.
And back, but now coming to America, like for instance, I had to learn how to not steal food and hoard food.
Yeah.
Because I hoarded food, and I was like that's one thing I was like really like, and of course, I'm a lot better about doing that now. I don't hoard food, I just, and because I don't know if it was gonna be my last meal or not.
Exactly.
So, and so it ended up being that flight or fight situation.
Yeah.
I was pretty much in a fighting mode, and so you had to think one step ahead of the enemy per se,
Yeah.
and I had to break that, and so that kind of was broken, like that kind of was broken, but then we see now, especially in this day and age now,
Yeah.
now we have to kind of think of, okay, you know what, we have to be one step ahead of, something like per se the government. We have to be one step ahead of the government. If we got to save up our money, we got to do all certain things. Because something bad will happen, we got to be conscientious of it.
Now, this wasn't one of the questions that I wrote down, but how did you learn English?
English.
Yeah, because you're really good at it. Like, how did you pick that up? Did you watch TV? Did you just interacting with people?
So so it was interesting because with English and stuff, I was in special reading, and I did Rosetta Stone,
Oh,
like a lot,
yeah,
and it was through school, and I was in special reading for quite a bit, and also because of this paralysis and stuff, I had to relearn how to talk.
yeah,
So, of course, I had to that kind of helped me, and whatever I had the speaking or the speeches and stuff, any Russian like dialects and stuff were pretty much out the window because I had to relearn how to talk, and I had to relearn how to do everything pretty much. So that's one of the things that became really good at speaking English. But of course, I now have kind of not slurred speech, but kind of a staggering speech. But it happens. It's one of the drawbacks.
you sound fine to me. You just sound like a normal like English speaking person. Like honestly.
Well, to me, it's like it's weird because, well, it's weird because I had to learn how to, and for me, it took a long time to speak English actually.
Yeah.
Uh, and it took me quite a bit, and even then, like in high school, I still struggled with reading. I still struggled in high school with reading, writing, and stuff because it's like, you're trying to learn two new languages, and it's a lot harder learning English. Um, and it's a lot harder because, when you're writing and speaking and stuff, because at some point you still have the Russian dialects, you still have the Russian
Exactly.
and all that in their language and stuff. So anyway, you're trying to break that. You have to try to break that, and then it's harder, and then you still have the aftermath of it, just by through the speaking and stuff. And
Exactly. And English language is really hard too.
it is.
It is really hard. Like I grew up with a learning disability and I couldn't read or write. English language is hard. Oh, it's one of
It,
the hardest languages ever because there's so many different wordings that sound similar but are written differently.
yes.
And the way that we speak, it's unbelievable. Like the fact that you were able to do that and sound American, like you sound like an English speaking person. You don't even sound like you don't even sound Russian to me. But it's so beautiful that you were able to get that far, and it's such a difficult process.
Hmm.
So
It was very fun. There were challenging times of learning English, and there were challenging times. It wasn't as rainbows and flowers that people think it is. It was
oh,
frustrating.
oh
So
yeah, it's definitely frustrating. Yeah, there's times where you want to break pen.
yeah.
I definitely can relate to that, right? So like, oh gosh, there's so many other questions I want to ask you, but I think that I pretty much asked you in a different way. But you did join the Air Force actually as an American, and you did tell us a little bit about that. But do you mind going into a little bit more detail about what was happening in the Air Force, I know that did you did you fly planes or anything? Was that part of
No, no,
no?
I was,
Okay.
no, I wasn't. So I was, fleet management and analysis.
Okay.
So what that is that I was in a building, a two-story building, and I made sure that nuclear vehicles were working properly. And I was more in making sure that your nuclear vehicles were in the right place at the right time, and also your vehicles, like your regular vehicles, were also operating correctly. So we were in the management department. So we would
Oh,
recall vehicles when there were problems on base. And yeah, it was we were in charge of 4,329 vehicles.
wow. And you said that you were bullied when you had to be when you were drafted into China. And that was just because of your Russian like background. You were bullied in
Oh,
Japan.
sorry about that. Yes. So
That's
I
okay.
was bullied. So I was bullied because I was born in Russia. Yes.
Yeah,
Because yeah, and I was bullied because um, they thought I meddled in the 2016 election, which is it's completely false. And they thought I like had something to do with just with the elections. And I'm like, no, it's a complete joke. I don't know what, I mean, it was frustrating, indeed. And there was no respect. It was sad because I felt like at that time, even a garbage can had more respect than I did.
that's awful. Just at any age, being bullied is awful, and for any reason. But just from another country, just because of their background, and just because you're Russian, that just it really makes me really upset because you're just a citizen. You're just a normal citizen who deserves respect. And just because you're born from Russia doesn't mean that you're an enemy in any sort of way.
Hmm.
I just
Well,
it's
well,
bullying is
and
so awful.
and the whole thing is that so the bullying, so the bullying from being from Russia didn't stop. You know, it only got worse.
Yeah.
Um, and it really gotten worse now, like especially in this climate. I've never gotten so much flack. I've never gotten so much like I have to literally watch my back whenever I go like in Madison or whenever I go like in Westfield. I have to watch my back because I'm always conscientious thinking, okay, what happens if something bad happens? Because I was in Indiana, for instance, and I do a podcast called The Sons Report.
Yeah.
Because my name is Soslan, Soslan, and so the first three letters,
Yeah.
SOS. Are, yeah. So an individual went up to me, and I didn't know who he was. Okay, he went up to me, and his face was so red, and he told me, "Go back to your effing country, you communist." And I said, "Wow." And another thing is that then you have your government officials that work for the people, but somehow that's all backwards. They tell you that you are a very dangerous man because you stand up for freedom. I mean, there's a major disconnect, and I don't know what is wrong in that sense. I mean, why on earth am I like? Is it because I stand up for freedom? Is it because I love this country and I'm patriotic? And you're telling me dangerous? That is some dangerous speech. That's some speech that you hear from Adolf Hitler and you
Yeah.
hear from Joe Stalin. That is some tyrant. I mean, I did my homework
Mhm.
and I did my research. Okay, that is some dangerous. What America is heading down, and what they're teaching this young generation, college students, is some dangerous stuff because they're teaching them to be non-American. They're teaching that America was a bad country to be in. They're teaching America that America is not the land of the free, and that America was suppressed, and America had slaves, and America had all this. Well, like for instance, the whole slavery situation. Okay, I want to touch on that because I've done research on it.
Yeah.
Okay, for instance, when Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Congress, when she kneeled for George Floyd and wore that whatever that, what I don't know what you call that, each of those patterns represented? They represent the black slave owners in Africa that had massive plantations that were black people, but they had slaves, like huge concubines of slaves. And so then those patterns were meant to distinct the slave owners. They were meant to distinct, saying, hey, this is our tribe, so we got to break this apart. So why, and the whole thing is that, it's like the whole education thing too. And they're thinking that, okay, if we can keep America in the dark, if we can keep Canada in the dark, then we can brainwash them and we can say then we don't have to tell them what really happened. Then we don't have to tell them that slavery didn't exist, which slavery did exist, by the way. We don't have to tell that, black people were also slave owners. We don't have to tell them that. All we have to tell them is that white men are bad or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it completely blows my mind. And another thing is that just the weakness in, for instance, going after women. I feel bad actually. And I go public speaking, and I said, you want to talk about persecution? I get discriminated and stuff. Can we talk about the women? I mean, let's realistically, biological women. Let's think about it. Because they're being attacked by their sports. They're being attacked because you have this not unhinged, but you have people that are lost. Because my whole thing is that if you don't have God, you're lost. If you don't have God on your side, if you don't have a faith, and you're going to be left into your own depravity, and that your own depravity is sin, and then you're going to see that sin is going to really twist your thinking, and that's what we're seeing, and we're also for instance, so I said the women are being attacked, they're being persecuted, they're being discriminated against, because you're having anyone now that can say they're a woman, and anyone like a man that goes into a prison system, for instance, in America. I don't know if you heard about that. But where he murdered his whole entire family, and he knew he didn't want to be in the men's prison. If you murdered your whole entire family, you were the scum of the earth, and So what happened is, during this jail process, he's like, oh, I identify as a woman. So then he gets transferred over to a women's prison, and he gets 2 girls pregnant.
Oh my God.
I mean, and then another thing is Lee Thomas, another swimmer, who literally has all of his male body parts. Yeah. All of his, It says that he's a woman and now steals the champion, goes up. Well, of course, he's built like a man. He's built like this. And it just blows my mind. It's like, and you see other countries, you see Russia, you see China, you see India, you see all these other countries look at America and are laughing at America, saying, that is and it was interesting because I watched the news out of Australia. So I like to watch Sky News out of Australia. You know what they said? You know what they made America? They said that America is a communist country, and they said that America is a laughing stock of the world. And Australia was saying that is, first of all, that is very ballsy for Australia to say that. But then to me that I realized saying that, okay, you know what? We do have a lot of work. We need to pray. Yeah. And we need to really go for people saying, you know what? God is in control. And it's so hard. I tell people it is so hard having God in control. Because we think that we can change. We think that, you know what? Oh, let's do as many things. Like in my life, I can do only so much. Because for me, I grew up in a country where I realized that if you don't have freedoms, it's so hard to get back. And when I see that in America, when I see that in Canada, it's getting so harder for that to get it back without, I hate to say it, but without a war. And it's just really heartbreaking, especially in Canada, in Ontario, they have that big truckers convoy. Oh yeah. And I gave $5 and I was audited for giving $5 to the truckers convoy. $5. Now it was not $5,000. It was $5. Oh my God. And then, but I feel bad for the stores, your mom and pop shops that donated $10 and that were shut down because of the government. And I do feel bad. And I do feel bad for Canada, because what they're doing to churches in Canada is absolutely awful. And you're going to see some dark days ahead for Canada, because I think the Canadians are realizing and waking up to seeing, okay, you know what? This is what we truly have not wanted. You know, this whole democracy thing, it's not like it used to be. You know, and the fact that when you say the moment of democracy is a moment that you want, you pretty much are saying we're no longer a free country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until then, I'm still gonna fight. And it breaks my heart, and it's so sad. You know, when you see, you know, I've never cried in my life so many times. You know, the fact that, you know, you see, like, you read the Bible, and, you know, you go to, you know, I've read the Bible and I've prayed to God, and I said, Lord, I don't know what's going on, but can you intercede on us? Because we are literally at our worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I'm sorry for I'm getting.
No, it's
that's
okay. It's true though. If you don't believe in something, at
Yeah.
least something like spirituality, God, like any God in general, if you don't have that spirituality in you, if you don't believe in anything, then you believe in nothing, and you do become susceptible to basically anything.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going to come at you, and you believe anything. And sometimes those things are either good or they're bad. But like, you're open to letting that, because you don't believe in anything, you're open to everything.
And
that's not the greatest thing.
And I also want to touch on this too. If you don't believe in anything, you're going to allow society to control you.
Exactly.
You know, you're going to allow people to control you. You're going to allow them to say what you believe, and you're going to allow them to say no. If you're going to believe. So, for instance, I posted this. I said, weak men allow society to control their thoughts and decisions that lead them astray.
Yeah.
I posted that, and you're welcome to follow me on Facebook. You're welcome to follow me on social media handles. But that is true. Weak men, you know, and it's this whole nuclear family too.
Yeah.
You know, and God gave us Adam and Eve. He didn't give us any other people. He gave us one man, one woman, and it's meant to nurture, and it's meant to like rely on each other. And so God also developed a church, to a community per se, because a church is just a building. You know, but what God intended of a church means you can be the church, you know, by, you know, bringing
creating
people together.
Yeah.
What's that?
By creating a community, you can create your own church. It's just about gathering and being each other's family in a sense, because if you have a community, you can take care of each other. And it's all about kindness, love, and taking care of each other.
Like, just like the Bible said.
Yeah.
Be kind unto one another. Yeah, and love thy neighbor as yourself. And love God, love people. And if you don't do that, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Like, do I see, like, for instance, it's not only in America where I see divisiveness. I see it across, like, I do quite a bit of research. It's all over the world. Yeah. You know, and it's like really sad, because you see families are now divided. Your communities are divided. You are, and it's like,
there's a lot of community everywhere. It's very sad, because we crave community as people. This is what we crave. And since the pandemic too, like, we've lost community. We've just lost it. And people, us as human beings, we need community. We need to be supportive of each other, not just with family, but with your neighbors, with your community. And we need to lean on each other, because at the end of the day, we all only have each other. And in order for us to take care of everybody in the world, we have to take care of ourselves and our communities, and start in our own backyards in order to make that grow into a bigger, better, peaceful world. And at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? Like, we don't want this awfulness to still be happening. We want freedom. We want the right to choose anything. Yep. So it's very sad that there, especially because of the pandemic too, I feel like communities have just been ruined. So it's very sad. And I want to touch base on you ended up getting a certain disease called FND.
Yes.
And
So
I want you to kind of explain to the viewers what FND is and how it kind of hurt your body in some ways and how you ended up getting it and how it affects you still today. I'm just
yes,
really curious because that's a really big part of your story, and I just want people to know that important.
yes. So I was wondering if we can save that for part two, because I have to, I'm looking at my time and I'm sorry, but can we do
Oh
this?
no, we can do part two for sure anytime. Yeah, I'm always open for part two.
So then I'm gonna have to, then I'll explain what FND is, and I'll explain how I received and stuff, because I have to, so that's why I have to find is that, so I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, we're gonna do a part two. So everybody that's going to see this is gonna be a part two, and I'm gonna be leaving links in the show notes for your podcast and your Facebook page and everything, so people know where to find you. And
Yeah.
we will do a part two for sure. People are just gonna have to wait for that. I'm not gonna announce when that's gonna be taking place. It's just gonna be a surprise. But it was so great to meet you and talk to you and to know you. And I'm so grateful to call you a friend now. And
Yeah,
now
same to you.
we have a community. And yeah, and just can't wait for the part two. And for our viewers who are listening, don't forget to rate this podcast if you're on any podcast network. Just rate and review. Leave 5 stars. If you're on YouTube, just leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe to my channel. And just keep listening. And we will be back with a part two, so you can hear more of this wonderful man's story. And
Yes. And if anyone wants to catch my podcast is called The Sauce Report. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, it's Soslan Temanson, SOSLANTEMANSON. You're welcome to give me a follow on Facebook as well as Instagram. So it's Soslan Temanson _2024. So and I'll give you my handles afterwards, so you can
oh yeah,
put
we're
it.
gonna leave those in the show notes so people can find them on YouTube and on anywhere that they're listening to this podcast. They can go get those links and follow you and get to know you better, because your story is wonderful. And we will be back with a part two, because his story is so amazing that we have to do a part two, because it's too long to tell a wonderful story like this and a wonderful person like this. But thank you for watching or listening to my YouTube channel or podcast, On Air with Danielle Gray. Thank you so much, viewers, listeners. I appreciate your support and for listening to all our episodes. Have a wonderful week or day whenever you're listening to this. And we will see you again. You will hear from us again. Just remember, On Air with Danielle Gray. Thank you so much.